at 6 p.m. marked Major League Baseball's deadline for teams to set their 40-man rosters in advance of the Rule 5 draft. The Pirates did nothing. Morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. No, I don't care either, okay? And I'm not going to do an entire episode breaking down the pluses and minuses of protecting players from Rule 5. But then I don't need to. I don't need to go and study why Sammy Ciani, an outfielder who was just sent to the Arizona Fall League and hit .375 out there and defended pretty well at all three positions, why he's not even considered to be one of the Pirates' top 30 prospects, and why he'll be available through Rule 5 for some other team to claim. I don't care. What I do care about, and sometimes it helps to just back off the subject matter, get away from the minutia, and see that on this 40-man roster, there are currently 2 open spots. There are only 38 players. Also, I could go through who those 38 players are, or I could just remind you that there's some dude named Joey Wentz on there. If you know who Joey Wentz is, it's time to press pause on this show, go outside, go for a walk, feed the birds, touch some grass, find a few other interests in life, because Joey Wentz is exactly who you would think he is. And that, in the broader scope, is to say that there's not really that kind of depth. And when it comes to the minor league system, there's Bubba Chandler, the top pitching prospect. There are a couple of first-round picks in Connor Griffin and Termarr Johnson, and then there's nothing. Not to be mean here, and if you're a parent of one of those kids, I'm not saying anything mean about your son, but that's how your system gets to be ranked 27th among all organizations, all 30 of them, by Baseball America, and 20th by Major League Baseball's pipeline. This after 5 years of a true tear-it-down rebuild. The kind that is supposed to flood your system, and even when it does begin rising to the top, there's still supposed to be ancillary flood, I guess would be the best way to put it. So when the baseball gods bequeath upon you Paul Skeens, whom you did nothing to earn other than to really, really suck for 1 year and then to win a lottery, and when you legitimately do well in drafting and developing Jared Jones, and that's what you have to show for that system, those two guys come up, the system drops in the rankings, but it doesn't have to plunge off a cliff the way that it did. And the real reason that it plunged off a cliff is that there isn't really much else in the system anywhere, any level, certainly not at AAA Indianapolis, the closest to the majors, which is where you tend to have your Rule 5 issues. Now, what, you say, you're not even going to mention all the players who've come up to Pittsburgh? Okay, let's do that. Let's go around the diamond and point out that Brian Reynolds was acquired by Neil Huntington, that there are no other outfielders of worth, that O'Neill Cruz was acquired by Neil Huntington, that the jury's still very much out on Ke'Bryan Hayes, on Nick Gonzalez, behind the plate on Henry Davis, on Andy Rodriguez, and yeah, who am I missing? Pitchers? Okay, Mitch Keller was acquired by Neil Huntington. Relievers? You want to throw David Bednar in there, you can, coming off the year he just had. But that's it. Those are the players who are here that are, real life players. I mean, heck, we can throw in Andrew McCutchen. He was acquired by Dave Littlefield, for crying out loud. So if you want to say, well, of course the Pirates' rankings drop, and I get this back, if you can tell from some people. Of course their rankings dropped. They promoted Skeens and Jones. Yeah? And who else over 5 years? Who else? This is, I understand and empathize with those who are really angry with the Pirates' ownership and front office right now. I also understand and empathize that the bigger focal point, bigger really than anything else, is always going to be payroll. Why? I mean, it's easy. It's right there, and it's something that everybody can understand. The checkout lady at Penn Mac in the Strip is going to understand Bob Nutting's cheap. But what not everyone's going to get, and I certainly don't blame them for this, is that this team's got so many issues that are actually so much worse and more damaging and more detrimental to the cause than payroll. And I know that frustrates some people. So whenever you bring up something else like this, they'll say, well, that's also because they're cheap. And actually, no, it's not, because the Pirates have spent more on the draft than any team in the majors over the past decade. The Pirates spend just as much on development and facilities and everything else as any other team. There's no discrepancy there. They've spent internationally up to the cap. They've acquired additional international bonus cap space so that they can spend even more, and nothing's come of it. And the reason for that is the people that you have running baseball operations aren't good at what they do. Doesn't exactly fit onto a billboard very easily, does it? When we come back, J1Q.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragechek.org. That's gunstoragechek.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q comes from Frank, who asks, DK, I'm wondering if the Pirates will non-tender Brian De La Cruz before the deadline to do so Friday. De La Cruz's $760,000 salary will inevitably be a couple $1 million higher through arbitration. It'll be interesting, Frank. On one hand, I would think this would be patently obvious that you non-tender him. The estimates that are out there, and these estimates tend to be pretty accurate because the arbitration process itself is based entirely on precedent. So you can say, all right, well, if this player was this and this and this, and he was an ex-WAR player, then you'll be able to project that in his first year of arbitration, he'll make this much. In his second year, he'll make this much. So making this short and sweet for anybody who doesn't know Major League Baseball's economic system, the first 3 years you're in the bigs, teams can pay you anything they want. Anything they want. There's a minimum, but it's anything they want. So De La Cruz wasn't very far above the minimum, as you mentioned, at $760. The figure that I've seen cited most often for a De La Cruz projection for what he'll get in his first of 3 years of arbitration is $4 million. So he'd be more than quadrupling his pay. And of course, he'd be doing so after he just batted, for the Pirates anyway, .200 with 3 home runs, 6 doubles, 17 RBIs in 44 games. Almost all of that quote-unquote production having come after it was needed. So, no, you don't keep that player unless you're trying to save face. Now, I have not seen that tendency in Cherington for the most part when it comes to player moves. He has added guys and he has subtracted them, and he's done so unapologetically. That's really what ought to happen here. There are more complicated cases, I think, that'll be faced by this team, mostly that of David Bednar. And Bednar is going to be due by these same estimates around $6 million, and he obviously had a really, really rough 2024. But I do see what you're saying. I do see why you're saying it, and I do think it'll be telling, because in addition to the baseball components here, to the pride components, there's also a money component. If the Pirates do, as I've heard that they will, take the payroll up to $100 million, well, that's $17 million more than they'll have spent in 2024. But if you also start throwing in, let's say they don't bring Aroldis Chapman back, that's another 10. No Bednar would obviously be more. No Rowdy Tellez and his 3. None of the 3 and change that was paid out over the first 2/3 of the season to Martin Perez. And I could do this all day, and I could probably get you about, 25 or 30 million in free money, meaning freed up money underneath what the Pirates' self-imposed payroll limit would be. And to that end, these decisions will be, they'll be pretty revealing, even if it's just in that regard. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Pirates. Going to do another one of these tomorrow.